What if I told you that a single decision made by Kenya's President William Ruto might change the future of money in Africa forever? What if Africa no longer needed the US dollar or any foreign currency to conduct business, trade, or investment? Could a new financial revolution be on the horizon? These questions are now at the center of a global debate, thanks to Ruto's bold endorsement of a pan-African currency, often referred to as the African dollar zone. In this video, we take you deep into the heart of this financial transformation. What is the African dollar zone? Why is Ruto pushing for it now? What would a unified African currency mean for the continent and for the rest of the world? Stick with us because this conversation is heating up. President William Ruto of Kenya has done something few African leaders have dared. He's gone beyond regional rhetoric and called openly for the establishment of a single African currency. Not just as an idea, but as an urgent strategic goal. And not just any currency. He envisions one backed by real value, like gold, natural resources, or Africa's vast reserves of strategic minerals. Ruto has consistently argued that Africa needs to break free from the grip of foreign currencies, especially the US dollar, in order to gain true economic independence. During multiple forums, including African Union summits and international trade meetings, he has voiced frustration over the continent's dependency on the dollar for intra-African trade, loans, and even domestic financial planning. Why does this matter? Because as long as African countries must settle trade in dollars or euros, they remain at the mercy of U.S. Federal Reserve interest rate hikes, dollar shortages, and Western banking systems. This isn't just about currency, it's about sovereignty. Let's pause here for a quick question to you. Do you think a unified African currency could work? Or would it be too difficult to manage across 54 diverse nations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. Now back to Ruto. His proposal comes at a time when the world is already shifting toward de-dollarization. China and Russia are pushing for trade in local currencies. The BRICS bloc is exploring a joint currency. And across the global south, countries are actively seeking ways to reduce their dependence on the Western-led financial order. The BRICS bloc, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has intensified its push toward a new financial order, one that could challenge the long-standing dominance of the US dollar. At the heart of this effort is the exploration of a joint BRICS currency designed to facilitate trade and investment among member states while insulating them from dollar volatility and Western-controlled financial systems. Although the BRICS currency is still in its conceptual stages, concrete steps are already being taken. Intra-BRICS trade is increasingly being settled in local currencies. For instance, Russia and China have ramped up energy transactions using the yuan and ruble, while India and Russia have begun to settle some bilateral trade in rupees. These actions not only reduce transaction costs, but also reflect a deeper geopolitical strategy to gradually de-dollarize the global South's economies. At the same time, new BRICS members, such as Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, are aligning with this vision, seeking alternatives to the Western-led financial architecture that has often been criticized for imposing restrictive conditions and unequal terms through institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Meanwhile, the United States is working tirelessly to preserve the dollar's supremacy. Washington continues to leverage sanctions, expand its financial surveillance networks, and strengthen strategic alliances to ensure the dollar remains the world's primary reserve and trade currency. Moreover, the U.S. is increasing its outreach to emerging economies, promoting dollar-based trade through diplomatic and economic incentives. Still, the momentum is shifting. With growing mistrust in U.S. fiscal stability, inflation, and weaponization of the dollar, BRICS is carving a new path. Whether or not a joint currency emerges soon, the bloc has already begun reshaping the global financial landscape, and many in the global south are paying close attention. In Africa, Ruto's idea resonates deeply with the legacy of leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and Muammar Gaddafi, both of whom championed the dream of African monetary unity. Nkrumah famously envisioned a United States of Africa, with one central bank and one currency. Gaddafi even proposed a gold-backed dinar for African trade. But both visions were buried, some say deliberately, by global powers that saw a united Africa as a threat. So when Ruto resurrects this vision, it's not just economic policy, it's political rebellion. And this rebellion is rooted in hard economic realities. Let's take intra-African trade. As of today, only about 15% of African trade is conducted between African nations. The rest depends on imports and exports to Europe, China, and the US. One major reason for this is the lack of a common financial system. Without a shared currency, businesses face exchange rate volatility, transaction fees, and the complexity of converting currencies through foreign intermediaries. A unified currency would change all of that. It would boost intra-African trade, reduce costs, and help integrate regional markets. It would also give African countries greater leverage in global negotiations. But what would this African dollar actually look like? Ruto and other proponents suggest that the currency should not be fiat-backed like the US dollar or euro, but rather backed by tangible assets, especially Africa's natural wealth: gold, oil, lithium, uranium, rare earths. These are the resources that the world depends on, and Africa holds in abundance. Imagine a currency backed by these commodities. It would not only inspire global confidence, but also insulate African economies from the inflationary cycles caused by Western money printing. And there's more. A unified currency would pave the way for the African Monetary Union, an institution that could eventually lead to an African central bank, just like the European Central Bank for the Eurozone. This institution would manage monetary policy, regulate cross-border payments, and coordinate development financing. Of course, there are challenges. Africa is vast and diverse. Economic conditions vary widely between countries. Inflation in Zimbabwe is not the same as inflation in Morocco. Nigeria's central bank doesn't operate like Kenya's or Egypt's. Bringing these systems into alignment would require immense political will, robust financial frameworks, and trust between nations. But let's not forget, Europe managed to do it. The euro, despite its flaws, became a global currency in under 2 decades. If Africa could learn from both the successes and failures of the Eurozone, it could design a system uniquely suited to its context. Already, regional blocs are laying the groundwork. The West African Monetary Zone, WAMZ, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, have long discussed monetary integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is also pushing for harmonized payment systems. In fact, in 2023, the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, launched the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS, a platform that allows cross-border transactions in local currencies. It's not a currency per se, but it's a vital first step toward financial integration. Ruto's call, then, is not in isolation. It's part of a larger movement. And here's the kicker. If Africa succeeds in launching a unified, value-backed currency, it could become a model for the global South. Latin America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East are watching closely. The world is tired of dollar dominance. Africa could lead the way out. But is the world ready for that? You see, every time Africa has tried to build something independent, from food sovereignty to telecom infrastructure to financial systems, it's been met with resistance. The IMF and World Bank often tie loans to the maintenance of current systems. Western investors fear losing control. Global media frames such moves as risky or radical. But maybe that's exactly what makes Ruto's proposal so powerful. It challenges the old order. It demands a new one. We're witnessing a potential inflection point in Africa's history. For the first time in generations, the idea of a united, sovereign, economically independent Africa is not just a dream, it's a policy. And it's being backed by leaders who understand both the risks and the rewards. President Ruto isn't alone. Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, and even Ethiopia have all expressed interest in regional monetary integration. As inflation, currency volatility, and debt burdens rise, more leaders are asking, why should we be at the mercy of other people's currencies? So here's the question again. Could Ruto's African dollar zone become a reality? Or is it just another pan-African fantasy? Tell us in the comments. We're reading every response. To wrap up, what Kenya's William Ruto has done is more than spark a policy debate. He's ignited a movement, a financial awakening, a geopolitical shift. And whether the world is ready or not, Africa is moving. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more in-depth analysis on Africa's political and economic revolution. Because this isn't just about currency, it's about control. And Africa is taking it back.